Today's episode is called Starting Your Business on Solid Legal Ground. We will be discussing the different business entities, things to think about when forming a partnership, and what you can do to protect your business.
Educate your money now.
Hello, and welcome to Educating Your Money podcast. I'm your host, Kirui-Case, owner of Matt Nick Bookkeeping Services. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. Today's episode is called Starting Your Business on Solid Legal Ground. We will be discussing the different business entities, things to think about when forming a partnership, and what you can do to protect your business. We would like to thank Out and About Business Solutions for sponsoring our podcast. Today's guest is Crislove Igeleke. Was that right?
That is.
Attorney at law. Crislove is a business attorney practicing in civil transaction and litigation. She is a passionate advocate and innate problem solver. She works with individuals, business owners, corporations, nonprofits, micro entrepreneurs, and community groups, from startups to day-to-day concerns. She values her clients and takes the time and effort necessary to make sure they are involved, updated, and fully understand the process throughout each stage of representation. She has represented a broad array of clients, from national franchises, corporations, and TV personalities to nonprofits, small business startups, and individuals. She has worked to resolve trademark disputes before the United States Patent and Trademark Office and claims of infringement, false designation, and unfair competition in federal court. Through effective case evaluation and strategic negotiation, she takes pride in reaching positive case resolutions for her clients. As an avid supporter of the community, during her spare time, Crislove continues to provide low-cost and free legal services through legal aid programs and as a volunteer for local organizations. She is the treasurer and board member to Teach Charter School Las Vegas and community outreach chair to the National Bar Association Las Vegas chapter. Crislove was most recently named Ones to Watch list in Best Lawyers of America and awarded the 2019 Pro Bono Attorney of the Year Award at the Nevada Legal Services Champions of Justice ceremony for her commitment to service. Hello, Crislove, and thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so I received multiple questions from entrepreneurs regarding, how to start their business, entity formation. Many look for some legal guidance, I think, but I also see so many business owners who wait until the last minute to look for legal representation on, or even just guidance on business matters because they don't think they need it so early on in their business. So what are the different business entity formations that an entrepreneur should know about when starting a new business?
That's a very good question, and I do see that quite often. The most popular business entity of choice, I would say, is the LLC. So this will separate your personal assets from any of your business assets. So in the event that anything were to go wrong with the business, if you were ever to be sued or had any debts that you were not able to fulfill, your personal assets would not be available. Only your business assets would be available in that instance. So the LLC is definitely the most preferred method. But for a lot of entrepreneurs, they do like to start as a sole proprietor. And this is because it's less costly to start up. There is not too many formalities, but the risk there, as I mentioned before, the contrast with LLCs, is that as a sole proprietor, any of your personal assets can be at risk. The structure is the partnership. Over the years, there have been a lot of new types of partnerships that are available in every state. So here in Nevada, we have what's called a professional partnership, which allows you to go into business if you are any type of professional licensed by the state. So for individuals that are doctors or in the medical practice, they would have the opportunity to set up a partnership that's based off of their practice. And that will give you some type of protections there if you go into business with other individuals who are also in those fields. A general partnership, however, is similar to the sole proprietor, where you don't have that restriction in regards to your personal assets being separated. So general partnerships are also very easy to form. You see this a lot of times when you go into business with family members, close friends, but it's always important to just have some type of dynamics of how the business will be run. However, you do just have to be a little bit more mindful that your assets can be subject to any litigation. And that is most important because you're dealing with another person. So whatever their actions are that may not be in line with yours, you're still essentially responsible for that as well. The corporation is another type of business entity. This will require the most type of filing and ongoing record keeping. You'll need to keep minutes. You'll need to have a board. Nonprofits are also considered corporations. So those are the general types of businesses that a lot of small business owners like to set up. In addition to that, there are a few other ones that are a little bit more nuanced, but I won't go into too much detail about those.
When someone has established a business, what are some instances when they may need a DBA or may want to establish a DBA?
That's a great question. So anytime that you file your registration with the Secretary of State, let's say you have an LLC at the end, if you want to list marketing materials or name your business as something other than what you filed with the state, even if you just simply want to drop off the LLC letters at the end, you will need to file for a DBA. This is a very simple process. You simply go to the clerk, the Clark County clerk. If you're in this county, you can also do it in the city of Henderson, city of North Las Vegas, wherever it is specifically that you plan to do business. And you simply register that name and link it to your current business. Something to be mindful of is that your liability will still be the same. So if you have one business going under one name and you decide to get a DBA, let's say you start off selling shirts and now you want to sell candles as well, you can simply file a DBA, attach it to your business. However, both of the businesses will be tied together as far as liability is concerned. And definitely I would recommend it if you are planning to do business under even an acronym or a different name other than the one that you registered.
And what steps does someone need to take if they've set up one business entity but have a need to transfer to another business structure?
So that's also a good question. I know a lot of people will start off, like I mentioned, as a sole proprietor, just because it's a little bit easier to get started that way. And later down the road, you feel like, okay, the business is starting to take off. I would like to have some protections in place, so I want to set up an LLC. That's something that you can do. It's fairly simple to do. The first thing would be to get this new business structure is going to be the one that's right for you. You definitely don't want to keep moving around too much when it comes to your business, because similar to your personal social security number, your EIN for your business will build its own credit. So if you keep having to get a new EIN, then you're essentially starting back over with your credit. But the important things to do when you want to transfer your business type is to refile your documents with the Secretary of State. So if you're going to incorporate, you'll need to file your articles of incorporation, and then you'll to ensure that you're now going to be taxed properly based on the new type of business entity that you want to set up.
And you talked about partnerships, and I think people, when they think about partnerships, they think it's the good things obviously would be that you're sharing some of the responsibility, some of the workload. You're also, you have someone else that you're able to bounce off ideas and move forward in your journey. But what should a new business owner think about when considering a partnership, as well as what are some issues that you may have seen come up in your business legally that affect partnerships?
So I would say, I know it sounds bad, but just think of the worst case scenario. And as attorneys, that's typically what we're trained to do, to try to protect individuals. We look at what can go wrong and how can we prevent that situation from occurring. So when you're going into a partnership, you should always assess what is it that we plan to do together. Make sure that the visions are aligned between you and your partner, and make sure the partnership is going to function. A lot of times, as I mentioned, people go into partnerships with families or close friends, and they think, because we have this great relationship, things are going to, turn out fine if we go into business. So what you want to do at the onset is kind of set out how you're going to handle, resolve disputes if they arise, how you want to share the profits, and just lay out the specifications so things can go as smoothly as possible. It's very important to consider the person that you're going into business with. Just like with the sole proprietor, as I mentioned, you're going to be responsible. Your assets are going to be at risk. You also want to take into consideration the other individual and how they're going to act in certain situations. And I think by having that partnership agreement up front, and by detailing the way that you guys want to handle things, you leave less room for any confusion down the road.
So it's almost like, when thinking of it in kind of in simple terms, of almost like a business prenup.
Yes, that would be the best way to put it. You are really, when you're going into business, it's a situation that you really want to be mindful of before getting involved in that. So yes.
And so for trademarking, even you and I have spoken in regards to my own business. When is it appropriate for a business to start thinking about trademarking and, protecting their intellectual property?
I would say as soon as possible from the onset. When you get started in business, protecting your business, especially your brand, is going to be very important. One of the main things is the fact that anyone else can possibly be using your same name. And if that individual were to file a suit against you, you would then be not only subject to paying profits that you've received by using that name. So you never want to have to start back over, especially when you work so hard to build something that your clients and your services kind of have its own reputation. You want to make sure that you can protect that brand. And on the flip side, you also want to ensure that if anyone else is out there using a product or using a name that's very similar to yours, that you have rights and ways to protect yourself so that you can then stop them from doing that. Because the last thing you want is for another business or another brand to come out and essentially water down your product and ruin the reputation that you've built for your. Think of is that, I'm just operating within my state. I don't plan to branch out or create several different offices or what may have you. So that was a simple way of thinking prior to COVID. But as you see now, so many businesses have moved from being a brick and mortar to being online businesses. And once you start doing online business, especially, that's where it becomes very important to have trademark protections, because you are not only reaching clients within your specific state, even though no one here locally may be using that name. Having a federal trademark will protect you across all 50 states. And from the time that you start using the name, you'll have the first right. So when you file that application, let's say there's 2 applications pending, the office will essentially look at whose business was using it first. So I definitely think that the sooner that you can file for your trademark is always going to be the better.
What should a business owner do to set themselves up to protect their business in other aspects?
So that's a great question. What business owners should do is put their contract in writing. So whatever, even if you are owning the business on your own, have an operating agreement that lays out how you plan to manage the business, how you're going to be paying yourself out, how much of the business you own. If something were to happen to you, who do you want to be the beneficiary on behalf of the business? Do you want profits to go to one person? Do you want another individual to be able to step into your shoes and continue to carry out the business? It's specifically for LLCs, but it's very important to do so, because by having that document, you're essentially separating yourself from the business, and that will help stand up in court if you ever were to be sued. A lot of times people will be sued both personally and with their business name. And if you have that operating agreement that you can show that, we're completely separate, then you can have that case dismissed against you personally. But it's always just very important to keep doing contracts. So whenever you start working with another company, whether it be in partnership or providing services, in the event that something goes wrong, you want to already set out what the repercussions will be, if it's going to be a fine or a fee. That way you don't have to deal with going to court to deal with those type of situations. So I would always just suggest that it's important to have your formation contract to set out how you plan to do business, as well as having contracts with everyone that you're doing business with. And this can also include your clients. Having some type of release or waiver will help ensure that you don't have to deal with any situations down the road because something was not thoroughly explained.
I know you see this all the time, individuals and business owners waiting, to the last minute to obtain legal representation, where you're kind of, it's kind of after the fact. The incident may have already occurred by the time they've come to you. And obviously I would imagine you're probably more in trying to be proactive by having them come in prior to, or at least giving them guidance on things that could happen along the way, and setting things up so that they can be prepared for that in advance legally. So what can someone expect when they come in to see you?
So I would always just tell my clients they can always expect understanding. I think it's very important to be educated, especially as a business owner. If you are running an organization or running a company, whether you have employees or you don't have employees, it's just important to understand the ins and outs. So yes, it's very important to get an attorney to explain the process to you so that you understand what it is that you're doing. And I like to have, constant communication with my clients so they can reach out if they say, hey, something seems wrong about this, or which way should I approach this situation? That way we can try to assess the risk beforehand before it becomes something that's much more costly and time consuming. So I just like to make sure that my clients understand everything that I'm doing. I'll do the work, but I do try to explain to them what it is that I'm doing. That way, if something were to arise down the road, they know that they can contact me and change this or whatever the case might be. So yeah, I think that that's the most important thing, is just making sure that they know what it is that's going on.
So Crislove, on top of offering a free consultation, you have prepared a document called What's in a Contract for our audience if they are interested. So be sure to post hashtag BizLaw, BIZLAW, if you would like to receive a copy of this document. Crislove, can you tell us a little bit about this document?
Yes, so this document kind of just talks about the specific provisions that you are going to see in any contract. It's always just important to make sure that you understand these provisions, especially when it comes to notice, terms of cancellation. When you talk about governing law, you want to make sure that your contracts are specific to this state. That way, you don't have to deal with being sued in any other jurisdiction and having to go to court there. So a lot of times what people will do is simply go to Google and find a form template and make sure that you have a contract specific to your business and everything that you're doing. Another clause that I would like to just note on that's in there is the force majeure clause. And that's for situations such as COVID. Let's say you have a business and you had an obligation to fulfill with your clients, and you had orders that you had to fulfill with your vendor. And if you have a contract in place requiring you to buy a certain allotted amount, you essentially still have to do that, no matter if you're not getting the clients that you used to be able to see on a day-to-day basis. So that's just something that I see a lot of businesses don't have in their contracts. So hopefully this guide will help you be sure to just take a second look at any contracts that you're signing before you go into them. I would always advise you to have an attorney review it before you sign. And essentially the biggest thing that we always say as attorneys is if it's not in writing, it never happened. So, your contract is going to be essentially your receipt for everything you're doing with your business.
I would like to thank Crislove for taking time out of her busy schedule, coming on the show and sharing her expertise. Be sure to post any questions or comments below. Let us know if there's a topic you'd like to have discussed on the show. Comment below or email educatingyourmoney@gmail.com. And if you are interested in receiving What's in a Contract, be sure to post hashtag BIZLAW, hashtag BizLaw below. Crislove, if any of our followers have additional questions or wanted to discuss more with you, how can they reach out to you?
So my Instagram handle is Business Nonprofit Law, so at Business Nonprofit Law, and I post constantly about different legal tips. I also make sure to post resources whenever there's new grants available. I'd like to share that information as well. You can also reach me at www.lovelawlv.com. There you can find more information about myself, my services, and ways that we can assist you. You can also reach me at 702-829-03 consultations, and those can be scheduled online by visiting www.calendly.com/Crislove. That's CRISLOVE, and there's no H. A lot of people think there's an H in there, but no H.
Thanks for watching Educating Your Money podcast, where it's not just about making money, but about educating your money. See you next week for the next episode. Thank you, and be safe, everyone.